Well, my being here goes back a long ways. Jeff Reardon started emailing me more than a year ago about the work he was doing here, and I became quite excited about it. And then we did a Skype session with his administrators. So I've been following Jeff's extraordinary work and the work of his administrators now for some time. So it's really great to sort of be here and sort of experience the excitement and the energy and the momentum in person. Had some amazing conversations today, and I'm looking forward to conversations with you this evening. What I'd like to try to do in a fairly short period of time is frame the education challenge that I understand it. Okay, I'd love to start with this quote from Einstein. The formulation of the problem is often more essential than the solution. Why 21st century skills? We in education frequently sort of have fads, as you probably have noticed. Reform du jour, fad of the month. A lot of people are worried that this thing, 21st century skills, is just another fad. What's the problem that we need to solve? Fundamentally, I see two profound challenges that face us as parents, as community members, and as educators in the 21st century. Number one, in a new global knowledge economy, the flat world, all students need new skills. The skills for a good career, the skills for continuous learning, and the skills for active and informed citizenship have converged. They are the same skills. And they're skills that, for the most part, we neither teach nor test. That's problem one. And now, this problem has become even more complicated because it's no longer just a matter of the new skills all students need. What we're increasingly coming to understand, and what I'm going to talk about tonight, is that students also need to become innovators. Problem two, this generation, the net generation, the digital natives, whom I had a great time talking with this morning in a learning walk at school, are very differently motivated to learn and to work. And we need to understand sort of how to motivate this generation to want to master the new skills. It leads me to try to reframe the education problem. For a quarter of a century, we've been hearing an ever-increasing drumbeat about failing schools, and the need for reform in schools and education. How many want to go to reform school? Raise your hand. It's punitive language. We're blaming people all the time. I would like to respectfully suggest that's not the right problem. The problem is our system of education has become obsolete and needs reinventing, not reforming. That's a very different problem. Unless that sounds like a hocus pocus to you, I'd like to remind folks that we started out with one-room schoolhouses, which we reinvented as we transitioned from a rural agrarian economy to an urban industrial society. Now, more than 100 years later, we still have the same factory model assembly line schools that we invented a century ago. As we move into a brand new economy, a different world, we need a different kind of education. Fundamentally, the real change that is so rapid that most people can't see it is this one. Knowledge today has become a commodity that's free. It's like air. It's like water. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? Can you win a Trivial Pursuit? Nobody cares anymore. The world no longer cares what any one of us knows. That's not a value added. Knowledge is changing, constantly growing exponentially. You may have memorized the 50 state capitals. You know more than I do, but I can Google it, and guess who's going to be quicker? Periodic table. How many had to memorize that in high school? Remember how many elements there were? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Whatever number you came up with is wrong because 2 more were added last week. Oh, and planets. Are we up 1 or down 1? Is Pluto in the club or out? See, the value of memorization in and of itself, the value of knowledge and memorization has dropped to near zero because it's ubiquitous. It's on every internet-connected device, and it's changing. This is the issue. What the world cares about is what our students can do with what they know, which is a profoundly different problem. That's then a matter of, do they have the skill and do they have the will? Very different education challenge. Developing students' skills and their will, meaning their motivation, is what I'm going to talk about tonight. I talked to a wide range of senior executives, literally from Apple to Unilever to the U.S. military. Talked to community leaders, college teachers, asking all of them, what are the skills that matter most today? I talked to recent graduates, asking them in what ways they felt most and least well prepared. And I came to understand that in addition to what I would call the qualities of heart that make us human, in addition to having a fundamental sort of character orientation to life, I'm talking about moral courage, compassion, integrity, empathy, strong work ethic. In addition to all those qualities, which have always been and will always be foundational, there's new or substantially changed skills that every young person must be well on the way to mastering before he or she finishes high school. Call them the 7 survival skills. And they're not just skills for a career. They're the same skills you need for continuous learning, the same skills you need to be a citizen in the 21st century. When I asked people what they meant by critical thinking, it got a little uncomfortable, because you know, for us it's kind of a buzzword. We're not accountable for it. So you ask us as an educator, what's critical thinking? Well, critical thinking, well, yeah, that's interesting. That means kind of thinking critically, kind of a circular thing. Really, we kind of get lost in our own words sometimes. Out there, though, they were very clear. They told me it was the ability to ask really good questions, to ask the right question, to formulate the problem, right back to Einstein, as opposed to having all the right answers. Because they know that what was yesterday's right answer won't work for today. Collaboration across networks and leading by influence. Increasingly, all work is done in teams. More and more, it's being done virtually. Talked to folks at IBM and said, yep, we have teamwork, but when we have a new client need, we pull together people from different centers around the world to work together. But the way those teams are led is completely different than it was 25 years ago. They're led by peers through influence, not by supervisors with positional authority. How are we in education, which is arguably one of the most isolated professions in modern work life, with most of us working alone all day, every day? How are we going to teach collaboration skills to our students? How are we going to model that behavior? And how are we going to ensure that every student, not just the leaders of co-curricular activities, learn how to lead through influence? Agility and adaptability, pace of change, complexity of problems, favors the agile and the adaptable. Very different world than what I would call the regularities of school, where today looks a lot like yesterday, which looks a lot like this time a year ago and a decade ago. Initiative and entrepreneurialism. Mark Chandler, Vice President and General Counsel of Cisco Systems, explained to me how senior executives of large companies like his constantly worry about how to keep that entrepreneurial spirit, that sense of initiative alive, because they know that's an engine of growth, renewal, and innovation. He said, if I have an employee who sets and meets 5 goals, 100%, that's no longer good enough. He said, if on the other hand, I have an employee who sets 10 stretch goals, but maybe only succeeds at 7 or 8, he or she is a hero. But think for a minute, what would that person be in our schools? Well, they would have failed 2 or 3 out of 10, right? I'm going to come back to this failure issue in a moment. Effective oral and written communication, the #1 complaint of both college teachers and employers. But it's not entirely what you think. Senior executive at Dell said to me, you know, the reason these kids can't write, they don't know how to reason. They don't know how to develop a coherent argument. And he said, that's only half the problem. The other half of the problem is, and I quote him directly, he said, they do not know how to write with voice, meaning they don't know how to put their own passion and perspective into their communications so as to be really persuasive. When was the last time, if you're a high school student, when was the last time you were asked to write with voice? Accessing and analyzing information, I've just talked about that. It's right here. It's on every internet-connected device, growing exponentially. It is perhaps one of the largest challenges we face in the 21st century. We have information glut. We need to figure out what's important, how to critically analyze what we have. Curiosity and imagination. Anybody read Dan Pink's book, A Whole New Mind? Raise your hands. So, as some of you may know, he argues that in a very sophisticated consumer economy, the right brain skills of creativity, imagination, empathy are at least as important as the left brain skills in order to create more sophisticated, expressive products and services. Increasingly, what I see, especially in high schools, is one curriculum. It's test prep. Now, look, I believe in accountability. That's not the question. The problem is we're trying to do accountability on the cheap with the factual recall multiple choice tests that we give students that tell us absolutely nothing about college, career, and citizenship readiness. I understand. This district is proud of the fact that it has always made AYP, but I am saddened by the fact that I see too many districts making AYP but failing their kids. Failing them first because they don't even graduate them. It's not a problem here, but it is in many places. But more frequently failing them because the kids may pass tests, but they don't have the skill and they don't have the will. And that's what matters in college and beyond. It's not what you know. It's what you can do with what you know. I have to tell this story. Mother came up to me after talk and said, my son is a freshman at Brown and he's got a big problem. I said, what's that? He said, well, he called me up a few weeks ago, middle of his first semester. He said, Mom, I got a big problem. They don't do multiple choice here at Brown. He had to write his first research paper. Didn't know how to do it. Taken all kinds of advanced placement courses. Never had written a research paper.
Consumer spending. 70% of our economy is based on consumption, consumer spending. Did you know that? I didn't know that. And more problematic, that consumer spending has been increasingly fueled by people going into debt. The savings rate in 2007 was minus 2%. People pulling money out of their houses, putting money on their credit cards as fast as they could. Leading me in my kind of English teacher sort of way to realize that maybe what's happened is we've created an economy based on people spending money they do not have to buy things they may not always need, threatening the planet in the process. And what I've come to understand is that even economists believe that's not sustainable. Right now today, an underemployment rate nationally is 15%. People are saving, not spending. Where are the jobs going to come back? How are they going to come back if that's our only economy? As I read further, I came to understand that more and more people seem to agree there is an answer, a one-word answer that poses a lot of new questions. The answer is innovation. We have to become the country that produces more better ideas to solve more different kinds of problems, not just high-tech, not just biotech, all kinds of problems. What do Bill Gates, Edwin Land, the inventor of the Polaroid instant camera, Martin Zuckerberg of Facebook, and Bonnie Raitt, the folk singer, all four have in common? Sorry, they didn't drop out. They were dropouts of Harvard, thank you very much. Not ordinary dropouts. Not those ordinary dropouts like Michael Dell or Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs. They were just college dropouts. No, these people dropped out of Harvard. So I began to get interested in the question of how do you create an innovator? What must we do as parents, teachers, mentors, and employers to further develop the capacity of many, many more of our young people to be innovative in whatever they do, to bring that spark of imagination and creativity, to create new solutions to new problems, to ask new questions. Not everybody's going to be a Steve Jobs. But my premise is, and the research suggests, many, many more of our young people can have those capacities developed. So in order to kind of research this question, I took a different tack. I talked to a wide range of young people in their 20s who were highly innovative in a variety of ways. Some high-tech, some social innovation entrepreneurs, some artists. And tried to then study and understand the ecosystem that had helped them to become so innovative. I mean, some were born gifted, some weren't. Some were from privileged backgrounds, some were from disadvantaged backgrounds. Then I interviewed all of their parents. This is over a period of 2 years. Then I asked each kid, young person, is there a teacher or a mentor who's made a great difference in your lives? Sadly, a third of them could not name a single teacher. But everybody could name somebody. And so then I went and interviewed the teacher or mentor whom they told me had made the greatest difference in their lives. And here's one thing I discovered. There's a lot I learned in writing this book, but here's one thing I discovered that I continue to find as a disturbing finding. In every single case, all of the teachers whom I interviewed, from elementary school to graduate school, were outliers in their systems, teaching in ways that were very different than their peers. In point of fact, among the 5 college teachers whom I interviewed in depth, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, Tulane, not one of those teachers had tenure, nor were they ever going to get tenure because of their outlierness. But then when I studied what did they do? I discovered, in fact, elementary to graduate school, a pattern of teaching and learning in their classrooms that is very different than the culture of schooling most of us have encountered in 5 essential respects. Number 1, we celebrate and reward individual achievement. We grade and sort kids, you know, from A to Z, 3.0 to 4.0 to 1.0 to whatever O. Understandably. But guess what? Innovation is a team sport. Problems are too complex to be tackled by individuals alone. Even Edison, you know, had a vast team working on that light bulb. It's not like it came on all by itself. In point of fact, every one of these teachers built serious, accountable teamwork into nearly everything that was done in their classrooms. Also, you know, individual work, but teamwork was very important. Number 2, we sort of celebrate specialization in education. You know, we divide and conquer the high school universe according to Carnegie units. Chemistry this, biology that. That system, by the way, is 120 years old. Can you think of one system 120 years old that we're still using? I don't think so. Go to college, you have to major, be a specialist. How do you get tenure? You know this much about a subject this wide. But the world of innovation is all about problem-based learning using multiple disciplines. Director of Talent at Google. I spent a lot of time in very innovative companies as a part of research for this book. Director of Talent at Google, Judy Gilbert, said to me, if there's one thing educators need to understand, it's that problems can neither be understood nor solved within the bright lines of academic disciplines. Sadly, I think our system of schooling, our culture of schooling, first of all, penalizes failure. We give Fs to kids who fail. It's a bad thing. We create a kind of risk avoidance system where kids learn to not take risks and give the teacher what he or she wants, where teachers are reluctant to take risks. It's a risk avoidant, compliance-based system. Very different from the world of learning to become an innovator, where it's all about taking risks and learning from trial and error. But in fact, how many of you can say you've learned more from your mistakes than your successes? Raise your hands. Of course, most of us. And that's where we gain self-confidence. It's not in never making mistakes that we gain self-confidence. It's in knowing that we can make mistakes, get up, and brush ourselves off. Our kids are going to make mistakes. Are they going to make them at the age of 8 or 18 or 28 or 48? The later it is, the harder it hurts, the more it hurts. Yet we protect them. And we penalize those mistakes all too often. Parents and teachers both emphasized play, passion, and purpose. Parents encouraged more exploratory play, less structured time, fewer toys, toys without batteries, less screen time. Same parents actively encouraged students to find and pursue their passions, valuing that far more highly than just academic achievement. Teachers the same, creating a kind of intellectual playtime in their classes from time to time, encouraging students through the use of projects in nearly every single class to find and pursue a passion that was of interest to them in the context of a project. And what happened is these kids found and pursued passions, often as middle schoolers, going into high school, then into college. Their passions morphed, they changed, they evolved. All the time the parents and teachers are saying, it's not what you do, it's kind of that you have a passion for what you do. And what happened was, in every case, these passions evolved into a deeper sense of purpose. All of these kids whom I interviewed want to make a difference in the world more than they want to make money. They really have different values, many of them. And in part, that's because their parents have said, you know, it's important to give back. Not necessarily in grand ways, but to give back, to make a difference in the world. And of course, when you really look at motivation, it's the play, passion, and purpose that creates the real perseverance to put in the 10,000 hours or whatever it takes to master something. So of course expertise is important. But how do you get motivated to acquire that expertise?
not from standardized tests. Now I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
You've given us a lot of good information, and my question is, systemic change, if you were to advise the community or advise us, because a lot of times decisions are made at the state level, made with legislators, how could we approach, what could we do to help make this, so we can, as you said, reinvent education?
Yeah. No, that's a really important question. Well, I think the work that Jeff and his team have started is exactly the right direction to take. First, getting much more clear about what should a high school graduate know and be able to do. What are the outcomes that matter most? Then once you've done that, you have to define your terms. Okay, we say all students should know how to think critically. What does that mean? What does that look like? What's evidence in a classroom? So that's a next step this district is going to take. Start really defining and developing a deeper understanding of what this needs to look like in the classroom. And then what kinds of supports do teachers need to make those kinds of moves. I also think we need in-district assessments. We need to start moving to accountability 2.0. I think every student should have a digital portfolio, beginning in first grade, where they document their own learning of these skills, their own pursuit of their passions, and create real products for real audiences. I think we ought to have capstone projects for students in 12th grade, 8th grade, 5th grade, which are extended kinds of research projects, where they're able to really pursue an interest and present what they've learned to an authentic audience. We need more multiple disciplinary courses. Fundamentally, though, I think what we need to do, you can't change a system all at once. We need to create a real kind of research and development ethic in our schools, where we create a fund that really encourages our educators who want to try something different, can get funding for it, can get the time to work with colleagues to do it. You know, Microsoft's R&D budget is 17%, Cisco's is 13%. What's Jeff's R&D budget? What's your R&D budget in Fayette? You don't have one, of course not. No school system does. But we don't have change without incenting people to try new things. That's what it's about.